So you know that I'm big on words and titles, cool titles. So I was really drawn to some of the names of the pieces on your program, specifically one by Alex Vittal called The B-Side. And I think that anyone who's been watching the new Beatles documentary or anyone who loves the Beatles is going to be very into this piece.
So this piece that Alex has transcribed from the actual B-side of the Abbey Road album by the Beatles is really incredible because he has such like painstaking attention to detail. So when you really hear in the record, you hear singing, like when he transcribes that to the cello part or to the viola part, it's magnificent. It's really truly a representation of the album, and each song weaves seamlessly into the next.
I was just going to say, I think more than any other albums, for me, the Beatles albums, and maybe all the more so because like I really grew up on them. We just used to listen to my parents' old albums all the time. But those albums are like they are a journey. Like one song goes into the next. I can't even hear a song off of any of those albums without waiting for it to feed into the next song.
Every single transition, even the sound of like a guitar kind of like tuning, is totally in like his transcription, and it's really fun because it's unexpected.
Hard, no kidding, hard.
Yeah,
That's a lot of detail.
guitar solos, I mean, so hard.
Right? Who knew? It looked so easy on stage. And then Gabriella's piece, Carrot Revolution. So she says that this was inspired by a quote that she had heard that's attributed to Paul Cézanne, perhaps not correctly. But I love this quote: "The day will come when a single freshly observed carrot will start a revolution."
She says that this piece is inspired by new ways of looking at old things.
Mhm.
And she like then cites them for influences, Bach, everything. And I love that because the whole piece has this through line of really unexpected things. The opening with the squeaks, and it almost sounds like banjo, but the basis of it, you can hear her inspirations, but she subverts all the expectations, and it's just a wild ride.
Even as far as looking at something like the genre of the string quartet, which is a 250-year-old tradition, just reimagining that. Really interesting. And then you're including Dvořák's American Quartet, which is something so much more familiar, but is also really based on the idea of, new ways of looking at things. He had just arrived in this country. He's hearing all these new sounds and sort of a new, a much younger country, a new way of being. Everything is just shifting his ideas about this tradition. I guess the way that we hear him hearing new things.
The way we hear him hearing new things, I love the way you just said that. I mean, the first bar of the piece, to me, when the violins enter sort of offset, this twinkling high register, it just sounds so fresh. Like, I know that it wasn't yet like the era of movies or anything like that, but I have this like opening of a film where like you can sort of feel like you're opening your eyes to what Dvořák might have been seeing, his influence with the trains and the Black spiritual, and discovering all these communities in like rural Iowa and the Midwest, and even the earthiness of the harmony. It just sounds so indicative of that era, the era of riding trains, like the great exploration.
Yeah. And the big wide open spaces. And I love, the circumstances under which he wrote this piece. He's just been in New York. It's been this incredibly hectic time. He's getting the school up and running. He's like just so in demand. And he finally gets to go on this train all the way to Iowa to see his family. They've just arrived from Prague. And so, it's this kind of like there's this expanse in it. And the community in Iowa is full of other Czech immigrants. So it's like he's touching something from home, but translating that through the language of his new home. It's such a special piece. I'm so glad that you're including it here because I think that the context will allow audiences to hear it in a very new way.
I think so. Definitely with it juxtaposed against all of these other pieces where those composers are sort of messing with your expectations of what you're going to hear in a string quartet in a different way. But then if we can take the lens from Dvořák's era, he also was writing something that we wouldn't have expected a string quartet to do at that time. So I think in different ways they're all doing unexpected and new ways of looking at old things.